And yet the writers in daytime have a very difficult task because they need to write so much. That is one thing I learned on the show by doing public appearances everywhere, in the provinces, in the sticks of Canada and of America, in the South and the North and the West and the East, everywhere. Small towns, there's a condescension in Hollywood towards that unwashed audience, my ass. You change your mind about that, you become more modest about it. And you become far more can tell you stories till the cows come in. We won't do that. But it's enormous. And I've always played the bad guy, and I was tired of that, to be honest with you. But very grateful to in Hollywood. 150,000, of which 1% to approach me as Eric Braeden, you know, and sometimes in the moment of passion and enthusiasm. So then 4 weeks later, they asked me to please, James Cameron wanted to see me on. I said, why? He says, why do you say it's going to be successful? I said, it's because it's a soap opera, and I know something about soap operas. It's a very, I have nothing more interesting to do. In other words, if I ever had enough courage to direct myself with the name Hans Gudegas, was proud of it, I'm still proud of it, but Lou was, meaning the contributions of German immigrants to this country have been overwhelming. We had maids at home, we did very well. So what drives anyone to become famous? Do you become what you do now? Why does this director become a director? Why? Because we want to affect people's lives. That is the essence of art. That is the essence of communication. Now to many parts in the world, 150 million people in the world, characters. You have the extreme right guy in America, Ronald Reagan, finds of just Russia, who is wise enough to know that Russia simply cannot keep up the arms race, and that it is 3 years, 70, 73, 74, they made no films in Hollywood. They had wanted me to sign an all-inclusive contract, television and film. I said, no television, just film. It was an egregious. They represented Tony Curtis and Anthony Quinn and Jimmy Stewart and all those people who suddenly were doing television because they're not. And they approached me, and Herman Citrin took me to lunch at the Hillcrest for 2 or 3 years. They knew, they were friends of Lou Wasserman's. They knew the financial conditions of the. Didn't know anything about Hans Gudegas, or because movie producers didn't watch television. He didn't know, he just saw the film. He said, oh, that might be an interesting new. Alex Ruiz, the agent, and I went to his house near Doheny somewhere, and he said, do you still have a British passport? I said, I have a German. No one would play James Bond, but someone who was a member of the Kim Hunter. And I didn't see much of them. They were very nice, of course. I felt very sorry for them because they had to be in the makeup room given by directors or producers. Never. I'm too arrogant for that. I never wanted to evoke the impression that I was there to, because I had known a lot of actors who knew a lot of people in this business and never got work. Because in the end, it's a business. They don't give a shit whether you live on the moon or not. They want you to perform and that's it. So they said, well, we have a ping pong tournament. I said, I'm in. Anything with sports. So it was part of the tournament where Walter Matthau.
You know, with Durant and Westbrook and the Thunder, and you know, it's just fun. It's fun. It's a good time to be a basketball. Take that seriously. You know, on the show I'm on now, within 5 seasons, I'll be 310 pounds with a meatball in one hand and a baguette in the other, sitting at the helm barking. San Francisco and Los Angeles are separated by about 400 miles, but they couldn't be worlds apart, you know. I was a water polo player in high school, and my season ended short, and I ended up getting roped into doing a play. Played Joe Keller in All My Sons, the great Arthur Miller play. And I said, this is what I want to do with the rest of my life, so I moved down to Los Angeles. Well, it's about you know, a global pandemic and a ship that's left out in the open water that hasn't been touched by the virus yet, and it's their job to try to create a vaccine and save the world. We get sort of, and when we get back to the States, we realize there's really nothing left there for us. So it's you know, us against the rest of the world, and some of the government's militaries have gone rogue, and we have to stop at Guantanamo Bay to pick up food and fuel. It's a pretty interesting premise, and it's a very exciting show. You know, 30 years ago, this would have been considered science fiction. Now it's highly probable, which is somewhat very accurate. You know, and We worked very closely with the United States Navy on this. Michael Bay has a great relationship with the Department of Defense in the United States. We couldn't have made this show without them, and we have their full support. We also had great technical advisors and liaisons from the Navy on set with us every day, making sure that we were depicting the lives of these people as accurately as possible in the circumstances that we were in. So as accurate a portrayal of an end of days sort of scenario or an apocalypse based on an outbreak of a virus. And I miss the guys that I was working with. I spent 7 years of my life with them. I spent, you know, just as much time with them as I did with my family. And I miss them, and congratulations to them for a continued success. That show just doesn't stop. But I had a great time working on that show, and I wish them all the best. I had a fan that, while I was at the Indianapolis 500 with Dempsey run up to me and latch on to me and ask me for a picture. And I said, sure, I'll take a picture. But she had nobody with her to take the picture, so she just started screaming out to any random person to take. And it literally, it was like a 5-minute embrace. I didn't know what to do. Now I'm teaching my oldest and my youngest to swim, so we spend a lot of time in the pool. But I'm a homebody. I spend a lot of time at home with them, and you know, I'm at work a lot, so when I'm not working, I like to stay around the house and hang out with them.
I haven't entirely gotten used to it yet. I actually didn't even know that I was referred to as McSteamy until my wife saw the episode and told the whole script. They had a scene that they had mocked up for the reading that I read, and it didn't say anything about McSteamy, but nothing bad has come of it. Right. So I'd tie it off and I'd let my hands go and throw caution to the wind and see what happens. It could be very uncomfortable on a set in front of 40, 50 people. On a beach, it's different. Right. On a set, when everybody else is fully clothed. Resume? Before they get to the boring credits and things of that nature, I look great with my acting lesson there. The director was the only one on the set allowed to yell, cut. And I would do these scenes, and it was my first. The interesting thing was they didn't even have, you know, usually you have an Elvis impersonator that you can take pictures with after to create more memories. And all we had was an Elvis statue, and it looked like they just ripped off of Bob's Big Boy. And apples and oranges. You know, if I'm riding to work, I like to be in a car just because I like the quiet that you're afforded in an automobile. But on the weekends, when I just kind of want to relax and go do my thing and not have any sort of chat, I ride with a couple friends. We go out to PCH, up PCH to Ulta. I do spend a significant amount of time in the gym, but I've always done that. It just makes me feel good. I like to stay. Yeah, I think for this character, I think it kind of works to play against all of that stuff. And I play against all the beats that are obvious and support that, because I think there's more to it. You know, you don't spend a lot of time with the character, and it's not like a psychiatrist, so you don't really get to uncover what makes this person tick, you know, in one fell swoop. It's sort of how Karev walks in with her, and I asked him if it was bring a hot blonde to work day. That was my fix. Because the doctors at the hospital are so ugly, we have to bring in gorgeous guest stars to create a balance. It was a pretty formidable guest star. I think she did like six, seven. Well, how many? Recognized a lot in France. I was in France over the summer, and that was weird. You know, to get recognized in another country is, you know, aside from the fact that they're recognizing you with an accent, it's kind of something else. I think 9 million people watch Grey's Anatomy a week in France. That's a lot of people. You know, I didn't know we reached out that far. Now, you know, I guess season 3 in Japan, that's about as far as it goes. Yeah, I get asked to take. Our fans are very sane. You know, we have supportive, and they're just generally interested in the show, and they're crazy about them. So I certainly have no problem taking a picture season 3. And I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but you will. It's very easy. He's much funnier than I am. So anytime he makes a suggestion, and it's he knows what he wants. It's fun. It's light.
Father likes to say, you know, you put your pants on the same way I do. It's a little annoying sometimes, but I have to stop and say, okay, this is my mom. You know, you want 50 signed headshots, I'll get them. She loves it. She goes out and buys, like, you know, if I cover a TV guide or something, she goes out and buys 10 copies. And then she shows them to me when I go home, like, I haven't seen them before. She's like, look at you. She gets anxiety. She needs to be, like, sedated before she gets in the chair. I have the greatest dentist. I didn't play rugby.
I was a lot lighter. I swore I was a water polo player, which is kind of rugby.
When you spend 15 hours, you know, maybe sometimes 50 hours per episode with somebody, you don't really find it necessary to spend time with them outside of that. We got separated. We had you know, because there's 500,000 people in Indianapolis, and you know, Patrick and I walking through there got a little dodgy sometimes, but it was fun. And I got separated from this whole group of people that we were walking with. So big. And she goes, "Oh my God, you have to get a look. Take a picture, take a picture." And I thought maybe I was looking around to find out who had the camera. And she wasn't with anybody. Nobody had a camera. She was just screaming. The Egyptian guy was telling me that Dubai is amazing. He said, but it's summer. Leaving the guy a one-dimensional character. Because then you kind of, the one thing I wanted to do was make sure that he wasn't the antagonist. At the end of the film, you should be sort of torn, you know, and I wanted to make this guy's motives for taking over this club sort of deceitful, undermining scheme to snatch up this club so that I can... You slip into habits because the way these things are written sometimes it's very... So you just have to stay, I just had to stay on my toes and make sure that I wasn't sort of hitting the stereotypical beats of the antagonist. $3 billion set to use, and it wasn't at our disposal as much as we would. Yeah, Rebecca was convinced we were having a boy. I said, great, we'll name her after my father. And when we found out it was a girl, I said, great, we'll name her after my father. I think probably, yeah, I think we would have to have him living. You know, I think the first episode is kind of business as usual, and then we slowly sort of regress and deal with. We get a lot of support from the Navy. We are forever indebted to them. They have been, and once you put on the uniform and you sit in the captain's chair, it really sweet because you know, and you know, looking back, hindsight is 20/20. I figured out, you know, if I were expecting something like that, I would have seen it coming. But I didn't know until the host opened the door and she pushed me into a room filled with all my friends that it was actually happening, which was kind of nice. But I froze for a little bit, and then I started seeing, you know, recognizable faces, and then you wonder what they're all doing in the same spot. And you realize, well, this is for a month. For the first, went to Monte Carlo in London. I did some promotion for the show, and then we went to Paris. So we were kids. I think that's the backstory. Oh, is that right? Yeah. And, you know, because it is my first time in Sweden. I have never been to Stockholm, and it is absolutely... I'm so sorry, ma'am. I apologize. It's my apology. Look, the water's on me. Well, I like to do everything with them. They're young. My wife, we've been married, but we love to swim. We love to go to the movies. We have movie nights, and how sincere he is, and at times how... I sort of, my life outside of acting is what makes my life so good. But my professional life, you know, I've been quite successful over the past 10, 15 years, and I've been very fortunate to be able to work in that. And the characters you play that you put up on the screen are the people you bring home with you, if that makes sense. For sure, for sure. And, you know, depending. I mean, a lot of the famous people are not as interesting as you would I always say fame makes good people. But I'm sure it was great. I have a picture of it, and I always tell people, I met Willie McCovey, he was a great guy. But sure, season 4 was kind of a, you know, a throwback to the original Greys, which was, you know, a year before. I did, and I think I still have a shot. I think the invitation's still open, so we'll see if I take it or not. But yeah, I felt a little dedicated to isolating Mark Sloan at the end of the season and leaving him with just himself. I personally love Katie. Yeah. We have a great work.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to talk about a show like this and not give too much away. Right. But basically, the future of America, and I know this is hard to buy, at the last minute, before they die, take over their body, like jumping into a car before it goes off a cliff, and then we live their lives, and it's a one-way ticket. We're not going back to the future. By premise and some of the missions that we are here to take care of, because some of what we have.
I remember the first time I was interviewed by People magazine, they asked me something about... I showed some clips just now to a packed room of like 4,000 people, and the reaction was what we've seen all along, which is the film is very purity, and I think so much of sci-fi these days. Well, Paris, which is what happens tomorrow night, it's a very exciting episode, but let's be honest, we couldn't shoot in Paris all season, knowing them, and that's what happens in Paris, and it's, but because he engages...
well, I have to carry the weight of the gay community on a sitcom. I didn't think it would be her. It's like there's a bigger subject matter that we can For God's sake, and stop drinking so much beer. Because I honestly, I've fast pages. I can't believe it, because it's like, as a guy turning 50, he was a guy watching me at that point do the thing that he was probably a scrapbook dedicated to my father's days as an actor at Ryerson. All these pictures of it. And he said, I'm very proud of you. And he gave me a hug and walked away.
It has developed in ways I didn't necessarily see coming. While it's a crime-solving show, and I think it's going to be a great fit on Alibi. I was 35 when I got Will and Grace, so I mean, while I was working, I was never famous. I never, years and okay years, but I did a lot of guest star stuff. I did a lot of it if you have to do it, but I don't know. One thing I would say is don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't find...
It was, well, I have to carry the weight of the gay community on a sitcom. I didn't think it would be hard. It's like there's a bigger subject matter that we can... Old school, right? And he actually even went to Ryerson, and I found out in Ryerson. I mean, I said, Dad, I'm going to this scrapbook dedicated to my father's days as an actor at Ryerson. All these pictures of him. And he said, I'm very proud of you. And he gave me a hug and walked away.
I love playing somebody smarter than me. I love throwing big words around. He loves it. That's the thing. He's a teacher and he's a scientist, and he loves kind of wielding that intelligence around. And of course, the irony being that because he's schizophrenic, his brain can turn on him at any moment. In me, which is great. I mean, when we shot the pilot, which was actually a couple of years ago now, it's going back to 2010, but I did a lot of research. I wanted to make sure that I got it right out of the gate, because it matters, because I wanted the mental health community to respect the show and embrace, trust my instincts and who this guy is, and we can have just a lot of fun solving crimes, coming up with really interesting twists and turns that only a neuroscience bent and his expertise can. My favorite is the show begins and ends most episodes with lectures. It takes me all the way back to, you might remember this, to the Paper Chase in the 70s, which I just loved. It was a law school show. But the lectures are fun. He's like the professor you wish you had. He's like that guy, what he does, and funny, and a little sexy, I hope. And these kind of bookend the show and give it a different feel. And that's, it's exhausting, but it's so rewarding. There's always tomorrow. You can never take it for granted that this is going to last forever. As an actor, even in a successful show, they come and go, and you've got to keep inventing yourself and keep looking forward, and remember that this could all disappear, and first and foremost comes your family, and exploded their own images. But for me, Sidney Pollack, that was one of the earliest ones where we weren't thinking we were on a show that made, and then
he showed up.
David, our producer, said, Sidney Pollack is playing your father. Explore more of that. I mean, I think that we start the second season with him on his medication. So I don't know how long that's going to last, but it certainly will lend itself to connecting more with people on a romantic level. Not sure, but I think there's going to be a little more. We're going to get to know both now that we've established the show and the engine of the show. I think we will start to get to know. Helps not just solve a crime, but helps him deal with life. It is his responded to this relationship. The way they loved, I mean, the show is very complex. The writers did the last episode of the season. I've watched it 4 times. I was in it, and I'm still going, wow, this is to pay attention. And they seem to be reacting well to, for us not talking down to them, but writing to a very smart.
Thank you.
There's an episode that was about religion, about a cult, and we have a great conversation. He hadn't, because he was a general practitioner. He was a doctor. Good to be an actor. It was looked down upon, and I think he just kept it a secret. He hid behind his doctorness, but secretly snuck down. Very wooden and shallow as an actor, so I found that it just lent. That would be what we're hoping. What they should take away, I think, is a sense that there was a time when fear might have been the motivation behind them. Ultimately, it was about entertainment and about... well, Paris, which is what happens tomorrow night, it's a very exciting episode, but let's be honest, we couldn't shoot in Paris all season, and that's what happens in Paris, and it's... but because I love now that the time has passed, that it is being given its due in terms of changes that it brought slowly. I mean, it wasn't overnight, it was the fact that people were watching it in their living rooms, and their kids were watching, and maybe some of those kids are going, I think maybe I can tell my mom and dad that I'm gay now, that where they couldn't have before, because they see their parents appreciating it. There's all of that social stuff, but there's also just, it's still funny. I'm pleased when I see it. It ages well. We still, the clothes look good. I mean, as a show, I think it can be around for a while, which I'm proud that we did some counterproductive in that way. We jumped ahead in the series finale to 20 years later. So we've already seen Will and Grace separate and come back together as older friends. So I think if we have a reunion, it will be as actors looking back on a Tuesday night in front of an audience where the show lived, and the audience had waited 6 months for these tickets, and the room was absolutely alive. I think that's where the show. Movie of the week with Roman Downey, and we've stayed in touch, and for many. He's a funny guy. He's a guy that gets everything he wants until this happens, and then it all starts to fall apart. So when Benson and Stabler first meet him, I'm in my 40s, and I think all guys in their mid-40s are trying to keep up with music and what's going on with the culture and with technology. And this is a guy that's doing it. He's in there. He's dating young women. He's made his fortune with the latest cutting-edge technology. I'm none of those things, but it was a nice stretch for him. Clearly very welcoming. I can't think of another set that I'd rather be on at this point. I hope on a show like this, any of the Law and Orders, sometimes the guest stars get the greatest stuff to do because they got to solve the crimes. We get to commit them. So all of them, these two characters in particular have had the most, from what I've seen. Mariska and Chris's characters, we've met the other people in their lives. We've seen their pain. So when they have an episode where it's more about the guest stars, we still know their backstories, and I think it helps to make them mad. I think what makes television shows last a long time is chemistry. I mean, the scripts can be great. If you're not really jiving, the love can only go so far. I think people really dig Chris and Mariska together. I think women are obviously attracted to him, but they're really attracted to her as a role model. And I think that the nature of these stories, just solving the crime gets us in the gut every time because it is about victims, it is about women almost always, and we all have sisters and mothers. Of people living with paranoid schizophrenia are high functioning, can hold a job, sometimes very responsible jobs. There's a woman who's been a real influence to me named Ellen Sachs, who is a law professor at USC in California and has been living with paranoid schizophrenia for years. She wrote a book called The Center Cannot Hold. At Nobody may actually have held a job and may actually have had something else going on that we can't just dismiss them. That the stigma of mental illness is the biggest thing. Like Daniel, with such influence and such ability, reminds people. Well, for me, Canada Day is also my son's birthday. He was born in the States. He's American born, but on Canada Day. So we're usually up there. My wife and son are up there right now in Canada, in our house in Vancouver, with the fireworks and the barbecue. Very much the same as here. But I missed it because I'm still in New York, finishing up a show. And we were doing a very, very funny bit written by Will and Grace writers, and Will and Grace, essentially, Deb and I were doing our characters, and we had a very funny bit about how, the Trevor Project is about how, particularly for youth, gay and straight are equal, that they hopefully we're getting into a world where it's not an issue, that kids won't be bullied. And we made a joke about not only are they equal, hell, they're better. Wouldn't it be great if our kids? And then we had a whole bunch of jokes about the things that are completely shut down. That whatever comfort he has in the classroom, he does not have on a crime scene. He does not have in the FBI offices with the clattering typewriters and the phones ringing. It's a coaster. And in the midst of it, he's a guy that is, hence the title of the show, he is perceiving the world in such a way that it makes him an interesting detective. Is the guy that keeps Daniel Pierce centered, because Daniel is a guy that should be on his meds, and he is not. And that is a key element of the show. Without Max as goes on, it would appear to be his teacher's aide and his sort of assistant, but he's a lot more than that. He keeps Daniel grounded. And does my wife do the same? Yes. In fact, it's probably the opposite. I probably drive my wife. It's hard. It almost sounds easy to say from someone that has had a chance to achieve these things, but I just don't
don't give up. I mean, I can't imagine my life if I had questioned. There was a lot of positives. That was a nice suggestion, but for me, it was going full throttle and never doubting.
The casting is everything. Camaraderie is everything. You can have great writing that never gets realized if there isn't a gel. And the casting process was amazing because to make a character like Daniel palatable, you've got to understand what others can see in him, and she's such an empathetic character and such a beautiful girl and she and I have just connected, and that can be tough. You don't connect with your leading lady when you're solving crimes. It can be long days, but she's so great. And then bringing Scott Wolf onto the show, R.J. Smith and LeVar Burton, it's just a lovely group of people. There isn't a bad egg, and I think that have something that I realize I may never have. And in the last 5 episodes, a definite shift on Daniel's part to how he looks at her.
So I'd go out at the stage door at the end of the show every night, and there's all these women with their program. And did you like the play? And she said, you were great. I think I liked you. The phones and the food. The worst for me was I played another about 6 years ago. It's getting to be typecasting now. Yeah. And a Butte play, and it's me and 4 women, and in the course of the play, I'm just awful to each of them. At the end of the play, Maura Tierney walked off stage, and I'm left there. The guy in the front row, and she leaves the stage. I sit down. I'm devastated. And before the lights even go down, we all walked in, and when James walked in, it was like, you know, the Pope had walked in, and very quickly he realized he's okay with that. I asked him to put himself on tape for a friend of mine who was turning 50. It was a woman, but I don't think he heard that part. And I said, just say whatever you want. Just say happy. There is nothing to be afraid of. It doesn't change your life. It doesn't affect you at all. Feeling inside that you made a lot, thousands and thousands of people and their families happy by simply checking a different box.
No, but Bob Fosse put me in a movie back in 1983 called Star 80, where I murdered Dorothy Stratton.
Great gig.
Probably one of the 2 most prepared directors I've ever worked with. And that big thing. You could make up a question and he would give you a real answer. It was bizarre.
Yeah.
And he's also an actor. So he understands us, and he knows how to talk to us, and knows how to motivate. Everything across the board, everything above title is all Sly Stallone. You realize he might be a genius. And it's an overused and abused word, but he might be a genius. The guy's. I say to Sly, as I walk on the set every day, okay, in The Last Batman, who had to go earn his part, had to go out.
Freaks you out. No, that's why I made it. When I read it, it was freaky. Then I talked to the director, he told me how he was going to do it. That, or Best the Best, or It's My Party. One of those 3 I hear about in every airport.
I just have a good time. I like sit at home, and my wife is also my manager. Puts a pile of scripts on my desk, and I go to work, and she runs the show basically. And everybody always says to me, it's an odd statement, and it always throws me. They always say, you should be bigger. Yeah. In fact, I did my first play at 4½, and I played a stutter. In grammar school, you know how you go around the room and everybody reads a smile. I said I could speak, but if I didn't, I could stuss. And I was under a lot of pressure, and that's also part of the stutter actually. Well, you know, there's also when some parents will live like you said you saw the CSI Miami. I did.
Yes.
Now that was a real wacko. That was a crazy guy, and he chopped people up, and he was strange and odd and all this stuff. And I was very good in that part. I love those kind of characters. But everybody thinks, he must be been around for 45 years, 50 years. And okay, so it isn't about, you know, quality. It's about how much you've done. So I went after everything. I went after everything. And since then, I've probably made 100 million.
That if you never insulted a child, or ever hurt a child physically, or ever humiliated a child, that she's the nicest person I ever met, and the best kisser I've ever.
Common questions fans ask me are things like, "Do you and your sister get along?" And we do. And you know, let me clear something up right here, right now. All those rumors about us not getting along all happened because I got her started in show business, right? So then she gets Pretty Woman and becomes the biggest star in the world. And the press is still, you know, talking to her like Eric's little sister. And one day she got sick of it and said, I don't want to hear his name anymore. So I said, ooh, there must be a problem. So, no problem. Every day and I go see him live whenever I can because he makes my day. A wonderful series called Bullet in the Face. Asking what it's bullet in the face. Yeah, it's cool. Anyway, it's with Eddie Izzard, and who's my favorite comic on the planet because
He's so good.
Because Richard Pryor died, and I love the guy, and he's a great guy too. And we had a good time together, and we made a series, and we made the beginning of the series, and I think it's going to be good. It's a very black comedy, and Eddie Izzard is worth the price of it. Incredible. He's so gifted, he's so smart, and he's so gentle. It's a nice combination. Yeah. But yeah, we're having a good time at Sundance. Also, everybody's very sweet this year. I know it's the weather because it's always dumped here when I've been here before the whole time, and everybody's cranky because I have on all the beautiful clothes like I mentioned.
Right.
Everybody's very sweet this year. It's very nice. Everybody says, "Excuse me," and you first. Did a very small, what I consider to be Lovelace. I think it's called Lovelace. About Linda Lovelace. With she grabbed it and holds onto it well. She's really spectacular to watch. I think if this film gets the distribution that it obviously will, here to promote is Lovelace and Bullet in the Face, and and say hi to you. And my family are big fans of yours, by the way. They love watching you, and just thought I'd pass it on. I told for pie, and it's called Pie Bake Shop. Bakeshop.com. P-I, not P-I-E, but P-I as in pie. And if you want the best pie, it is a major problem, and it's dealt with in a way that we'd have to deal with. I would lie about it. But I think this state, oddly enough, has a very good government. Way far away, and I was tired. And I get home, and I'm told by my wife, manager, that I have an audition for a show called Heroes. And I went, I'm too tired, can it? After Star 80, I could not get a date for 3 years with a nice girl, and that's not as it's supposed to be, in that you don't know where he's going to take our people. Since I recruit the heroes, is he looking for a bed or the week after, in my brain, that actually changes the whole course of my...
Anybody in this industry, no matter what the facet of the industry you're in, be it a camera, acting, writing, producing, directing, whatever it is, treat everybody you meet like you're going to be your boss tomorrow.
The Butcher was the originality and the cleverness of the script. I mean, it was something I hadn't read before or seen before, even though it is a shoot 'em up, bang 'em, knock 'em down movie.
Like anything else in the whole world, it's what you make of it. And I know that sounds... I don't think I do either. But I understand them, you know, being in my 40s. I understand their mistakes. I don't condone them, but I understand them. And I'm not angry with either of them anymore. I think emotionally unstable, and they were both horrendous, which is a big problem. But besides that, they're great. How to get out of it? I basically ruined every relationship I ever had, ruined my career, ruined everything. So I had nowhere to go but up, which is a good thing because, in the words of Thomas Jefferson, we need a revolution every 3 or 4 years.
Stopped in '87 with all the heavy stuff, but then I kept chipping and kept revisiting it up until really...
Dad, what are you doing? You have to do this video. Okay, so I called her back and I said, is it too late? And she said, no, come on. So I fell in love with the Killers. They're a great bunch of guys. And had a great time, and that video went number one. The Mariah Carey video and the Akon video, and those are number one, so I'm the number one. And then just a quick story, I have these two white, he like gave me this horse pregnant, so I now have these two beautiful white horses. The worst food and the hottest weather I have ever encountered in my... I just learned, what's our national park in the States right in the middle of our country? What's that called, that great big park where they have... And it would make sense with all the Old Faithful stuff, but I'm told when and if, but it's a when, you know, that erupts. It might be 100 years or 500 years, or next Tuesday, but I'm 30 years or something. It's a big deal, volcanoes. So they fascinate. It's an odd question. It's not anything I've ever thought about, but it's my family.
And but I don't want to on the show, so everybody who like watches this understands all the colors as opposed to just
fun these things. And my wife, these things pay adequately. They don't pay well, but my wife, who's my manager, she makes me do them. She says, you have to go do them. I says, why? I don't want to travel all the way to England. I just wrapped a job last night. I don't want to go all the way to England. She goes, you have to go for your fans. She loves you guys. So love her back a lot. Common questions fans ask me are things like, do you and your sister get along? And we do. And let me clear something up right here, right now. All those rumors about us not getting along all happened because I got her started in show business, right? So then she gets Pretty Woman and becomes the biggest star in the world. And the press was still, talking to her like Eric's little sister. And one day she got sick of it and said, I don't want to hear his name anymore. So I said, ooh, there must be a problem. So, no problem. Camp, we had a great time, and we all like each other. And the only guy, anyway, it was a lot of fun. Sly Stallone is probably the most fun of any director I'm proud of. It's a very hard film because it's called Star 80, and I play a really bad guy. But it was like me. I have bad things about me, but this guy was out me, and so he was hard to play. But I had a great director, Bob Fosse. So it was a lot of fun, and I'm very proud of the work. The only thing wrong with it is after I played that role in Star 80, I couldn't get a date with a nice girl for 3 years. Any director I've ever really loved, and I probably only really loved about half a dozen of them. And but she's married to it, for a real reason. Not just because she wrote it. No, she has real reasons. And if you listen to her, she probably is the most intelligent woman I've ever been in a room with the exception of my wife. That's a huge compliment because my wife's a bona fide genius. Anyway, yeah, if you do your homework, and if you don't, I wouldn't want to meet you on it.
If he really, really hates me, then why did he ask me to do that show after so many years? If I really snubbed him.
Right. Charlton Heston, Karen Black, F.F. Syphilis, Roy Finnis, Myrna Lloyd, you had them all here. Larry Storch.
Yeah.
Wonderful. I had a really great time. I was only supposed to be here 3 days. I ended up here almost a month, which was great. He was the me that could be and get paid for being me. Hey, Martinez was working in me. Yeah, that's right. I took it a step further. I was able to use the power that I had gotten in getting the show. Italian-American. It was written for an Italian-American motorcycle cop in a white Anglo-Saxon cop. And there was no Latino in there at all. But when I got it right away and signed the contract, I walked into the producer's office and had a chat with him about, wouldn't it make sense for the last... I said, would it make sense to, since I'm Hispanic-American, why don't we change the name to Poncherello and make him an Hispanic? And they went with it, and ever since then, now you had cops.
Yeah.
Then they started getting roles, because we were never really in a positive role. I wanted to take him to task before we went into syndication. Because you go into syndication, and what happens is that James Gardner, 11 years fighting them in court to get your money. And I said, no, for $75 million. I said, well, I have 50% of that, of the net profits participation. They would take an act and say, look, let's not do an increase in salary. Let's just give you a
reason for that.
Yeah, total reason, because they have 2 sets of books.
Yeah.
So anyway, when I walked into David Beagleman's office in MGM with my 2 attorneys, I said, I'm here because I understand you guys sold. This is 2 years, you need 2 more years with Eric Estrada's Punch. See, my lawyers find out their deal. Their deal was that they had to deliver 6 years of print with Eric Estrada's Poncherello. So I knew that was my smoking gun, so I could walk in there with an attorney and say, okay, now let's do, since I legally have contractual rights to 50%, let's have a contract written up from Quarterly. He put me on a defensive, so I hit him. But all I did was laugh at him, and I told him, hey, listen, man, I've shined shoes, I worked at laundromats, but I never boxed groceries, F you, and I walked off the show. So they replaced me with Bruce Jenner, the ratings went in the toilet, another job in Hollywood, as long as that group was still around. So I ended up going to Mexico and coming back with the #1 longest running, highest rated Latin soap opera in the history of Latin television. And so the ratings were so strong that it was knocking out secret to anything, no matter what, even if you're a plumber or whatever you're into. I wish I hadn't sometimes been a carpenter or a mason, so that I wouldn't be in a business that you only work when it's available. So, but unfortunately, I fell in love with this, the passion for this.
Yeah.
So, who's always thinking while he's talking. The one that's over here watching me saying what I'm saying and moving as I'm moving and watching him and watching over there and knowing that that's over here and that's over there while I'm looking at you. That's who you got to protect. That's your you. That's the you.
None of that was necessary because they wanted punch. They wanted punch. They wanted going into the Burbank 19 public schools and implementing a program, internet safety program, the NetSmart system, that teaches age-appropriate interaction. The movie's great. This movie's great. I mean, for me, there's a couple of things that really stick. The animation and the music, banging. It's banging. You'll have
whatever, just to get to know her and meet her. But she would never come out of another movie called The New Centurions, and then a Hawaii Five-0. I went from the projects to Hawaii.
Well, Smile Train is an organization which is the largest cleft palate charity. They were established in 1999. Different countries in which they help children with their cleft palates. They correct. He's either burning a building, shooting a priest in Hawaii Five-0, or shooting heroin. How's he going to be a good guy? So the producers came up with a great idea. He says, you know what I want to do? And once he put me in that uniform and screen tested me, it made me visually neutral. And, you know, well, oh, it was great. Every time we had it was always great when we had an actor on the show that I grew up watching as a child. That, to me, was like cool because when we had the black and white TV back in Spanish Harlem, and I used to watch TV, and to come across these guys, it was awesome. All the old legends and all the old guys, you know. That was one of the fondest things that I got out of the show. And it was just a great, good all-around show. You know, back then, we never drew our guns. We were on Sunday night, 8 o'clock, the family hour. No, I wanted to be a cop first, a New York cop. At 17, I changed my mind, and then because I got bit by the acting bug in the drama. And yes, I went last year to Mazatlan, Mexico, and I visited one of the clinics. There was a day of evaluation of 90 families that have brought their child or twins, a set of twins, female twins there, which absolutely, I just couldn't believe it, you know, seeing so many children with these cleft, of all ages, with these cleft palates, which is not a disease, it's a defect, and it can be resolved with just $250. Well, I met all the families and all the children at the clinic there, talked with the doctors and such, but what got me really hooked me to be part of this for the rest of my life and pump them and help them and raise money is that the pain that I saw in the parents. I have 3 children of my own, and I was there at their birth, and I could never in my wildest dreams imagine walking into the hospital and seeing my child. And with the viewership and the people listening, because it's only
they can go
yes, they can go to www.smiletrain.com. I mean, it's incredible. Right. This organization started in 1999. They have done worldwide over 700,000 mouths so far, cleft palates. They pick up the tab. Oh, well, for my daughter, she wants a couple of things for her Wii. She, you know, her taste has taste of. She's 11 now, so her tastes have changed. Now she wants a little bit more stylish clothes, a little more hip stuff. She didn't want to travel at all because we usually try to go to Hawaii, to the Grand Wailea, to just chill out, and because they have fireworks on New Year's Eve on the beach. So now we're just staying home this year. We're staying home, and it'll be nice, but it's kind of difficult because I just got home from going 170 miles an hour for 3 months to standstill because the business is quiet now. Everything is quiet. People chilled out on vacation. Nothing picks up again until January 15, 16.
A true story. My first movie was called The Cross and Switchblade. First base Christian movie ever made. But the guy I played was the Switchblade part, Nicky Cruz, who was the leader of a gang called the Mau Maus. It was them. But that's when the days when gangs used to fight with hands, sticks, maybe somebody got smart and made a zip gun. But no. Today, gangs are hosted as a bad dude, you know. And from there, I went on to play the Latino. And NBC didn't want me because they said, nah, we've seen him on Kojak. We've seen him. He was an arsonist in Kojak. He was played the stereotypical, back in the day, Hispanic American. Chips came along, And the producer knew, he saw something in me that was Poncherello, so he said, NBC's not really keen on you, demand, but they figured, oh, this kid's gonna be a real. And I said, no, guy, don't look at me that way. I said, it makes sense. Why don't we change my name to Poncherello and we make my character Hispanic American motorcycle cop, different light. So that's something that I wanted to accomplish personally, because for so many, where's the job? Let me go do the job. Give me the money so I can take care of my responsibilities. I'm a worker, so it doesn't matter. I mean, and I'm not stressed out or freaked out about, oh, man. Nah, work is work. Staying alive.
Yeah, it was, as soon as you put, something about a uniform, as soon as you put it on, you got it. But it was all right, because I knew I was wrong. So when the cop, by the time he got to my window, I already had the license sticking out. Used when we film on location, said, we heard you got a ticket this morning. I said, that just happened, 2 minutes. It's, I finished about 2.5 years ago. We finished it. Originally, every time I worked in Latin America, they would always dub my voice, because I was born and raised in New York. And because this show was so big, it was the highest rated Hispanic show in the history of Latin television, and still is. I won the Spanish equivalent to the Emmy for...
That's what it did for me, and he was such a great guy for about 4 years. You know, it's like a statue. The birds get on you and they don't. But
Yo juego el papel de Nick Lupin López, que es la estrella de un programa de televisión con el Blade Ranger. Para mí lo que fue especial es ver cuando este programa, la película Planes, Fire and Rescue, y estar trabajando por Disney, y después la interpretación de Patrulla Motorizada como Chops en la película, y yo ser la voz mía para el papel del carácter ponchadero. So you can, as anybody can, you can take advantage of a second chance, and if not, you can create a second chance by reinventing yourself, which I've had to do in this business, in show business. I mean, I was a cop on TV because I want to be an actor, and then ended up as an actor on TV, and now in real life, I'm a real cop who acts once in a while. So I went in complete circle. I took advantage of the opportunities that presented themselves. That's why I can personally identify with the message of second chances. I brought that. That's there. It's always in there somewhere, you know. So I brought that, the joy of being involved in a Disney project. One of the really great things about the movie is that you can bring your child, you can park them in front of the screen, and you can let them watch this, and that child will walk away with the know-how and the ability to understand that there are second chances in life. That once presented es de maravilla. Hay un fuego en la película y la música detrás del fuego es very thrilling, muy y también la parte mía me gustó porque hago la voz mía en español, la primera vez en español anime, y también hay una lección en esta película para los niños, que cualquier persona puede lograr sus deseos o su interés, porque siempre hay segunda oportunidad en la vida. Dusty Crabhopper is very racist, and he's quite good at it. He's champion, admired, but he has a misfortune of his engine, and what happens is that they can't produce that part. They don't make it anymore. It's discontinued. It comes a time in the movie where he has to go under this bridge, and then he's got to power up to go straight up. And he meets those challenges, but at the same time puts himself in jeopardy, like firefighters do every day, front line. Because if he goes to a certain level of speed, he could blow up, he could burst. He achieves a second chance, and he also shows great bravery. People that become cops, people that get involved in public service where they're light because they step to the left or they step to the right or they walk in on a situation like police officers. One of the most dangerous things as an officer, and the old will tell you, the most dangerous call is a domestic dispute. These people, this is their job. They become this because they're compassionate. The job does change you, because after the third day on the beat for me, and I work graveyard, because I couldn't work during the day. I roll up on a house or on a call, and for firefighters who are the first to arrive at a situation, at an accident, they're the first to show up. They're considered, we call them as officers, we call them the front line. But we're right there with them, but they're the front. Thank you is important. This movie says, thank you, firefighters. Thank you for risking it. They don't really care about getting a medal. You don't really care about being a los bomberos, porque ellos son los primeros que llegan a una situación cuando haya ataque de corazón. Lo hacen para servir, para tener una vida y tener trabajo, pero lo hacen porque son personas que tienen un tremendo de compasión para su ser hermano. The audiences will like it for the same reason I liked it. Well, personally, I'm glad to have been involved. But the movie itself is exciting, it's funny, it's really funny. And the music is a simple thing that you get a child at 5 years old, you could teach a child 5 years old because it's proven they're more retentive at a young age. So that's why you got to get a child young, give them the necessary tools to go on in life, like being open to second chances. You fall down, you get up. You get up, dust yourself off, and move forward. Go and do your dream. Get it done. You can do it. You can do it. There's always the opportunity for a second chance. If it doesn't present itself, you make the opportunity of a second chance for yourself. That's what the movie teaches. Weekly show. It's syndicated around the country. It's on NBC in Los Angeles. I'm not sure what the syndicated station is for town. None of that was necessary because they wanted punch. They wanted punch. They wanted movie's great. This movie's great. I mean, for me, there's a couple of things that really stick. The animation and the music, banging. It's banging. You'll have van a encontrar el personaje que yo portray. 2-3 meses en la internet. Exacto. Como amigo, como hermano, le hacen. A pilot to Patrick Wayne, John Wayne's son, that I went up for, I didn't get. And then I lost the next one to Desianes Jr. Oh. And then the third one that I was lucky to go up for was Department with the Salvation Army, takes a group of families to Target. Mm-hmm. And they have that every 1st December of every year, and I show up for that as well. And then now I'm involved. Also, I became a deputy sheriff in Bedford County, Lynchburg. Got rained out. Yeah. I was here with the Luis Mandrell celebrity shoot. Okay. It was a great weekend, and the good people, the man, appreciated. I love it and appreciate it, but I'm reminded sometimes my head's in the clouds, and somebody will say, "Hey, aren't you?" And I go, "Oh my God, yeah!" And then they start talking about it, and then they watched it with a kid. Their kids are watching it now because it's in syndication now, But it was serve deputy sheriff in the state of Virginia, Bedford County Sheriff's Department, and I'm a task force captain to work for them, to be with them. And it's always great to come out and see the folks. Latinos, we're very excitable. We talk like this. You think we're fighting. We're not. That's just the intensity. And being important to work for Disney, I was glad to get the call to work for them. Then they told me they wanted me to do my voice as a helicopter being punched. And I said, what? And my attitude was, what? What do you mean? I said, well, they're going to do a television. Do is bring my voice to a character that I so loved in VoxCeleb 2001 and all that, 21 and other stuff. But this was I was in my. I can give you a lot of irks, but I was in my. I'll give you a simple one so it's clean. Park in the car because I'm going to go have some Argentinian food before I leave. And then I had to go back in the car and go to my luggage and take out coins and put in the meter. And somebody just across the parking lot yells, "Hey, you need some change? I got change." I said, "No, I got it, thank you." That's it. Then I went and ate lunch. I check my tweets last night when I get in from Miami. And the guy tweeted, "Oh, I just asked Eric Estrada if he needed change for the parking meter." That's cool. But there was a time when I was at the drugstore. I had to get a prescription, and I'm online. And when I talk on the phone, as a Latino, we're very excitable. Right. I go home and I always check to see what people. I just check it. Somebody tweeted, "Oh, Eric Estrada complain." It's a good thing for socially. It's also good but it's also a very dangerous situation. So there's good and then there's bad. So Back in the day, it was just paparazzi. You're coming out of Spargo's, or you're coming out of the Bistro, you're coming out of a disco, Studio 54, you know, back in those days. But that's all it was. Today, you get on a plane, if you fall, you know, I mean, so you got to be on your toes, because you don't know. It's more a and I look for it, because you look for the distinct sounds and then expression of how they express their words. So this one is very distinctive of what blew my mind, chops they call it. The throwing in of that, right. I saw it and I just blew my mind, and I said, wow. They call him Nick Lupin Lopez, because he does the aerial tricks with a helicopter.
Yeah, just a little bit. A very humble guy, Kurt. But let's go back to the 2012 draft for the Washington Redskins, of course, with the #2 pick selected Robert Griffin III. And then what surprised so many is that in the 4th round, they chose Kirk Cousins. Cousins told me this week the one thing he tried to do was really stay patient and remember a phrase his father told him: the cream always rises to the top. You'll get your chance. And of course, Redskins team to their first post-game victory in a decade. Michael Strahan, say it with me.
Thrilled to be a part of it in general. Just college football, to me, yeah, hearing that I get to do, you know, the voice and be a part of all these special little features from the visual effects.
When Oregon State upset USC, and I remember being on the field when USC met a guy named Jacoby Ellsbury when he played for the Beavers. He's one of my favorites, plays on the Boston Red Sox. Love Pat Casey. Mike Riley is one of the best guys to deal with. I think we both have a really dry sense of humor, and the CMTs are, I think that's the coolest part. I mean, I know he's friends with a lot of these guys. I'm a big, you know, fan over Kerry, over Luke Bryan, over these guys, over JJ, and so yeah, that's why I feel like we're kind of living. And I think one of the things we kind of mentioned in our first conference call together is we both like making fun of ourselves. So I'm all for it. We are doing that tonight, which you're welcome, America. They will love that. And, you know, we kind of spoke a little bit when I am curious, what are you doing? Because that's kind of, we were trying to match you and we were not really getting feedback. Are you dressing your gosh, for the past 8-9 years that I've worked in college football, through the tunnel for the very first time, and what are you going to be thinking about? And he said, you know, I will have goosebumps, and he said the #1 thing I'm going to be thinking about is winning. And you know, I'm really, really proud of him. I'm excited for his family. You know, you read all the stories and see where he's come from, and I'm just wishing him the best of luck. He's a great in Texas and Notre Dame, and you just really don't know how things are going to go. There's so many question marks, and it's tough to see that again, because you just feel like you relive it. But I'm getting better. It's been a nightmare, and I still kind of every day want to say, am I going to wake up? I'm ready. Right now, I don't know those things. I'm not really at liberty to say a soccer, because we know that this happened in at least 2 rooms. They got me in at least 2 rooms. Working an event for ESPN, and I got a phone call. I was tipped off by somebody. You need to check this out. People are saying this is you on the internet naked. Take it seriously. I laughed at him, and I could tell he got really upset, and he said, Erin, you gotta look. And I opened up the computer, could feel my heart pounding, saw it for 2 seconds. To live with, you know, my lawyers have done a great job trying to get it down, but the best part of this whole story, being sarcastic, is I've had law enforcement tell me, you're just gonna have to deal with the fact this is never going to come off the internet. All of it. It keeps popping up. I mean, people have such a good time trying to put it back up. The images are... I mean, just recently, signing a new contract with Fox Sports to be a female host on a primetime studio show. There really aren't many women at all in that role, and I know what a big position that is, and I know what a big, you know, undertaking that is, and a little bit of it frightens me, but I think I wouldn't be doing myself justice and my career justice if I didn't push myself and really challenge myself, and that's what you know, excites me about this new gig. I could have stayed at ESPN where I was for the past 8-10 years and really concentrated on my private life and having a family, and instead I said, you know what, I'm going to yet again put that on hold, and I'm going to work hard and really try to expand my career and do something I don't know how to do very well. And you know, I'm going to be vulnerable in front of millions of people that are watching me at home, and I'm comfortable on the sidelines, but I felt it was time to challenge myself in the studio. Yeah, I mean, I think more women are more involved since I started. You know, when I started 10 years ago, there were maybe like 2 or 3 females in a locker room or on the sidelines. Now it's just packed with them, and that makes me happy, and that makes me thankful of the women that came before me, like Pam Oliver and Hannah Storm and Melissa Stark and Susie Kolber and Leslie Visser, the women that really paved the way for me. And I'm delighted when girls tweet me or, you know, stop me and say, you're my idol and I want to do what you do. It's very cool, and I get goosebumps, and then I feel really old. But I think it'll expand. It can only get better. And you know, now women are trying to become play-by-play announcers and work in the booth as analysts. And really the popular role has been sideline reporter. I'm trying really hard to be a great studio host as well for females. And it's only going to get better. I do have a strong man, and it's my dad. And actually, I think that's why I'm single, because I haven't met anyone that compares to my father yet. And you know, I'm really looking, but it is hard because he's very big shoes to fill. And he is close with all 3 of his girls, my sister and my mom, and our 2 golden retrievers that are females too. But my dad is a guy that you can basically talk anything with. You can talk sports, you can talk boy problems, you can talk, Dad, I don't get this whole politics thing, can you explain it to me? My dad is so great, and it's funny because he always said, you know, I was excited about having girls, but I didn't realize they'd become my best friends. And I talk to him 5 times a day, and I know I wouldn't be this far in my career without my dad and my mom. So yes, he is a strong man by my side, and I think that's why I really can't find anyone on the other side yet, because they have to compete with my old team of your own. You don't have to do what your partner wants. Have a team of your own. I mean, that's what I used to do. Sit down with my dad and learn about his team, but then I would start to like guys from other teams. And Dad, I like him. Well, he doesn't play for our team. You know, cheer for somebody who you like on your own. You don't have to do it what your partner says. Well, Degree right now, Degree Women, they're celebrating the unapologetically strong woman or women, and really what they're doing is celebrating the women that are pushing boundaries and working really hard, whether it's at home or in a career. And you know, you don't have to apologize for having success. You don't have to apologize for working very hard to be the best you can be, wherever that may be. And I think it's great, and I think it's a great program for other women to celebrate each other, because sometimes you don't see a lot of that, and that's really sad. I didn't get to stay up and watch it. I was on a morning show, so people wake up early for that. When I have my firstborn, it's going to be like Lion King, Circle of Life. I'm going to give birth to my child and pass it on to.
You can't move your mouth.
It's that, yeah. I mean, well, I was wrapped up like from Christmas Story, Randy, where he's like, no, but the biggest factor for me, it's not even like, you know, you're freezing. It's just the constant runnage of the nose. And I just feel like you don't know if you're talking to a player and you've just got the snot coming down, and it's like, so that Hail Mary. Look, this is my thing. They're grown men. They know what they're doing. My only question about it, Justin Bieber, I didn't know the street cred was that high for Odell and Victor. Paraphrase. I heard you had a question about that. If you hear something for the NFL, you do have to paraphrase. Nick asked me. Texting, and all of a sudden they're like, look out. I've been nailed in the face by a baseball before at a Mets game, and it was no joke. It hit off my face. It was a line drive, went in the stands, and this little brat hit off my face. It was a line drive, went in the stands, and this little brat kid was like, can you sign my ball? And I was like, I'll be fine. And baseball players and trainers were running up to me asking me if I was okay, and I'm like, it's a workout that I do, and I would love all of you to try it. And every single one of you here could go to our over 550 studios in the United States. It's strength training, it's cardiovascular, it's changed my life. Why don't you come with anyone else? It's like, you know, me being a sideline reporter and dying for the University of Florida. I love where I went to school. I'd never want to go anywhere else, but would I have loved to have tried Alabama for a minute to just check it out, or the University of Texas? Yeah, danced. I was very jealous of Derek and Nicole, and I was kind of, I don't want to be around them. And I was just like, oh God, Derek Huff's so great. Yeah, but he's with a pussycat doll. Then I came and I hosted the show, and the first season I hosted the show, it was with Amy Purdy, who had, obviously, she had lost a leg, and Derek was her partner. I have one story about him, and then I'm sure we have to go because I'm taking up all the time. When I competed against Derek, my season, very vocal about, she's a pussycat doll. She was in, you know, performing art school since she was 14. I stink. I can read a football box score and get 10s for doing that, but obviously I haven't, but I know what people are saying. Now, this is what I hope. Keo hasn't made it past who can take coaching, who can adjust.
Yeah.
She may be good. And she's with, who's she with? I mean, hopefully the rest of the boys to men are in the house. Nick Carter, we had Nick Carter last season who made it all the way to the finale. Some thought maybe he should have won. I would think that one of these two, Von Miller or Antonio Brown, or maybe both, could be in the
I came home one day from the war, and a couple of weeks at home, my mom says, well, you know, one of those kind of wells that you're going to get a job or what? So I went out and looking for work, and I just couldn't see myself going into those factories locked up there for 10, 12 hours. So I'd take my lunch and go to see a movie or go somewhere and do something and go home at night. And so help me, Gail, I looked up there and I saw that golden light. I said, Mom, that's what I'm going to be. Never saw me on the stage, but one time before she passed away. And but she said, whatever you do, stay with it, because I rushed out this morning. She said, I was over at Costco, as a matter of fact. She said, Mr. Porknight? I said, yes. Right. You know, it's so heartening to hear people say that, and that's what counts most of all in my life, is bringing some happiness into people's lives. Because my mother said to me one time, you know, if you can bring, make a person happy in a span of 24 hours, you will come for a year or so to make some pictures over there. And when I came back, I was rattling around the house for a while, and my agent said, listen, we've got a thing called McHale's Navy. We want you to play this Lutas. And so he said, we need you, you know, and we'd like to have you as soon as possible. And I said, I don't really want to get back into television anymore because, you know, I like motion pictures. Okay, but if you change your mind, let me know. Next morning, knock, knock, knock on the door. There was a young man selling chocolate bars for some high school out there. And he said, would you like them? Sure, sure, okay. So he reaching for the money, and he said, Mister, you look awfully familiar. What's your name? He does Gunsmoke. I said, no, no, no. I said, my name is really Richard Boone. He said, no, he does Have Gun Will Travel. I said, son of a gun, this kid really knows them all. I'll get him now. Thank you very much. Put down the chocolate bars, called the agent, said that part. Gave a little talk over at the Washington Press Club. And I was quite honest. I said, listen, there's a whole group of Girl Scouts that came by, and they're taking their picture and everything else. Would you mind taking a picture with them? I said, no, not at all. So we walked over, and these girls had given a whole truckload of cookies and sent them over to a rack for the boys. And I said, that's marvelous, you know. And do you know who I am? No answer. Have you any of you ever seen my pictures? I took the bull by the horns. I said, have any of you ever seen SpongeBob? Marty Allen, the whole bushy-haired comic, you know, and his wife Frenchie, who had since passed away, God bless her. You can bring, and she's staying at the hotel over there because she's here for a couple of 3 hours. I must say this, and just to save myself, I don't know what happened, but during that time, it just seems that something just didn't gel. Yes. And you thought at the beginning it was going to be wonderful, and this is what happened is this. We took a trip from here to Hawaii to Tokyo, and everywhere we went, Ernie, Borgna, oh my goodness, and Matter, and just awful. And I'm saying to myself, I've done something wrong. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't understand it. Well, we went to a party, and she ripped me up and down, and I walked out. And the next day I said, Madam, you go your way, and I'll go mine. Oh, one day after we're married, she comes up, Ernie, you see that room in there? I said, honey, that's not a room. And I said, do you want to be in this business? She said, yes. I said, then it's time to start. Out of the house crying. I don't want to go anymore. I said, sells in London. She sells in Germany, Dusseldorf. Yes. She also they're thinking of bringing her over to the girl that you want. Not to the one that's passing by, or for all time to be with her and to be her husband. I tell you what, I went home one time after doing a scene with a woman where I was supposed to fly through the air and jump on the bed with her and everything else. I went home. I had said, listen, Ernie said, I know you like the water and all that. He said, we're going to play a lieutenant commander and all that, and would you mind doing this show? And I said, no, not at all. You know, give me to get out on a PT boat. And so off we went. We made this thing. And actually they were exploiting a young man who they were looking for to build him up for motion pictures and everything else. Evidently it all fell through. Nothing happened. But still made 7 Against the Sea. And one day, and he took a bunch of sailors and went out into the desert, I believe somebody, and they were supposed to send back, you know, the weather reports from this African and all the stuff that they get into with the Arabs over there and everything else. I never saw the picture, but, you know, this man said, hey, why not put this fella with a bunch of fellas with a PT boat over on an island and do this, that, and they said, we'd like you to do, we love the water. Yeah, it'd be nice, but I said, no, I'm a motion picture actor now, you know. I don't do television anymore. So, well, if you change your mind, please, you know, we want to get started as soon as possible. Let us know. A young man came to the door the next morning selling chocolate bars for some school that wanted to put up a building or something. And he said, would you like to? Sure. I said, how much are they? And I was digging for the money. And he said, mister, you look awfully familiar. What's your name? I said, my name is James Arness. He said, no, he does Gunsmoke. I said, no, my name is really Richard Boone. No, he does Have Gun Will Travel. I said, I'll tell him my name and I'm sure he'll know. So my name is Ernest. He said, I know, I've seen you somewhere. I said, thank you, son, here's your money. Thank you very much. Took my chocolate bars, went inside. Called up my agent. I said, that part's still open? And he said, yes. After we had done McHale, I'm way up in Oregon looking for some place to stay for the night. And I opened the door to this cottage, you know, an office, you know. And the fellow took one look. He said, you can be a very, very important motion picture actor. But boy, if you got it made on television, you can go all over the world, believe me, in a hurry. And people take you to their heart if they like it. It was on for 4 seasons. We did 148 of them in 4 seasons' time. Of course, in those days, we used to do a year. And we'd shoot one a week. And it was a lot of fun. The way everybody took to me, you know, as if I'm the guy, you know, that keeps everything together. Well, okay, McHale, my Navy. So I got all the fellas together and I said, listen, I want to tell you something, fellas. The more fun we have doing this, the more the people are going to enjoy it. And if we really, you know, because we do our work, boom, bam, bam, and all, we'd have at least 12 pages of dialogue and action in the can by noontime, believe it or not. We were good. And the rest of the time we spent around playing, you know, and everything else. Of course, we didn't do it in front of the producer. Producer sat up there with us, always working, you know. He tried to direct us a few times, but it was so hard for him. He finally decided, thank God, you make it so that people laugh. And it's so easy. I don't know. A good actor in my estimation, whenever he's reading something, whether it be can place himself in the position of saying, that's me. I can do that. I know how to do it. Because your imagination and remembrance. Remembrance is an awful big thing. Can place himself in the position of saying, that's me. I can do that. I know how to do it. Because your imagination and remembrance. Remembrance is an awful big thing, such an age. Can you remember how you did it? Can you remember, too? I remember when going along, many times I said to myself, I'm the best runner in the world. Why? Because I used to love to hear that wind rushing by my ears. As the faster I went, the more wind there was in my ears. And it was marvelous. And to these days, I can still, well, man, I know what I can do, you know? And this is what acting is all about.
and nothing else. You take the printed word and you make it come from your heart and your head, period. I said that one time to these youngsters that were in Yale University, going to the Yale School of Drama. I was invited to lecture the people in the Yale School of are you one of those, what they used to call Marlon Brando, that school of acting? I said, what we're doing right now, just talking between each other, we're acting. This is what acting's all about. We are acting with each. You're listening to me, and I'm listening to you. And I answer you in kind, so I'm back and forth. That's no. They couldn't believe it. I said, well, what else would you? They finally said, shook their head and said, by golly, you're right. You're right. That's what acting is all about, because it comes from here over these things, you know. And I love reading between the lines. You know, to me, my personage, but the personage of this character that the writer wrote about. And so I go over each and every line. Do I understand? Does that line make sense to me? Or why would I say that line if if I wanted to say something else, what would I say in its stead? And all these things I take into consideration as we're going along, reading and studying. Because I always feel that somewhere out there, and you say, what do you say? What do you say? You've lost them. You've lost them. Because it makes sense to you, yet you had to say it because it... And I say, that's no good. So you break down the word. You look up something that pertains to that word. And you ask the writer about it naturally and say, oh, yes, I should have thought of that myself. But, you work it out. And then the first thing you know, those thumbsuckers are satisfied. And they say, God, golly, that was a good play. That was a good show. Why? Because he believed it. He believed not the words of the play, but he believed what you were saying. Ray and I are still buddies, still friends. We now work, believe it or not, as voices. SpongeBob. I play Mermaid, and we met at the first time we did it. We looked at each other and said, "What are we?" When you see Tim Conway, you look at him and you say, and then he turns on. It's like the very first time that I ever saw him, and I didn't know that he was going to be on the show. Nobody said a word, and then coming in on this boat, and he's arriving on my island on a boat, and he's holding on to that you can never imagine. Never saying too much, never just quiet, nice, but he was there all the time. And just it's in my book, but he was a wonderful director and told Delbert Mann about me. So Delbert called me, I'd like you to, we're going to work together. And so, fine, sir. And I suddenly found this man came from North Carolina, and he was part of a most wonderful group of people, and writers, directors and stuff. But Delbert Mann was a teacher, and without really, what was I saying? How could I put it? Without really ever felt that he was teaching. It was just like, I always told him, I said, I just did something here that I could never have imagined in my mind, thanks to you. And he said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that, And we went on to do a number of things together. And I remember when we did Marty together as a motion picture, I said, well, here we are back again, except that we got the big screen. He said, yep. And it was his very happened. I was making a picture called Veracruz down in Mexico with Gary Cooper and Burt Lancaster and all. And Delbert came down to get a few ideas of how to shoot outside because he had always been used to a studio. He wanted to get some kind of clue as to what to do outside and everything else. And so he had Bob Aldrich as his teacher look at the script of Marty. I said, no, not at all. So he read the script, and a couple of weeks later at a party, he just goes around killing people. That's all he does in his pictures, He stabs them to death and do the... No, I said, don't kid yourself. He said, this guy could do it. So they said, okay, we'll take a chance. So they called me in, And they said, we've got a part for you in a picture called Marty. I said, fine, that's wonderful. I'd be very glad to play any part. He said, you don't understand us. He said, we want you to play the role of Marty. I said, then I'll give you 120%. Thank you very much. I said, okay. So now when you're making this picture, I left to go right up to Lone Pine, California, where we were making then Bad Day at Black Rock with Spencer Tracy. They said, Delbert Mann and Patty Chayefsky are going to come up and have you read for them. Okay, fine. You know, you read, good. Well, make a long story short, I was leaving the cast of Bad Day at Black Rock one day, and Spencer looked at me and he said, hey, where are you going? He said, if anybody leaves here early, it says me. What's it all about? So I told him the story, and he said, gee, it sounds pretty. By golly, that's all right. Oh, don't worry about it. He said, you go on ahead. You'll get it. Don't worry. And Patty was sitting along. They'd just come up in an airplane, little plane bouncing all over these mountains, you know, going up to Lone Pine. And make a long story short, hi, fellas. How are you? Hello, hello. Good to see you. Delbert, wonderful to see you, sir. All right. And I went in and kind of washed up a little bit. And so I said, well, let's get ready to start. I said, well, you know, Ernie, he said, we've been talking. He said, we feel that, and he got to the word but on his excuse. I said, sir, I said, believe me, if you feel that I'm not right for the part, you know, I'll help you find somebody, because I said, I feel quite strongly about this. I feel that, you know, this could be a heck of a great motion picture. So then instantly I forgot my first 6 lessons in acting that I had learned at way back. Forgive me, you know. So I went over, threw my hat down, took my boots off, and rolled up my sleeves and everything else out. And now Patty's reading all the other parts, my mother and everything else. And I'm reading, or the gray suit. And go down, there's a lot of tomatoes, you know, and I turned to her and I said, Mom, don't you understand? I'm just a man. And I started to cry because I was that much into it, you know. And I turned and I came back for my retort, you know. I said, all right, I'll put on my blue suit. And I looked at Delbert and he was crying. And inwardly I said, God, I've got to. It was the best performance of my life that day, to try to prove to those 2 men that I could do it. I went back the next morning. Spencer looked at me and said, oh boy, great, great, that's wonderful. The next year I beat him out.
Me and said, you know, when I was a little fella, we used to run home from school in order to be able to see McHale's Navy. And I had mothers write to me and say, you know, I know exactly where my boy is when McHale's Navy is on. Because depression was on. It was a good thing to get into the service because, hey, you got 3 regulars a day, you know, and you had to work a little bit for it. But it was, they said, have you ever thought of becoming an actor? He says, you always like to make a damn fool of yourself in front of people. Why don't you give it a try? And I looked up and I saw that golden light come down and I said, Mom, that's what I'm going to be. After coming back from Italy, having made some pictures over there, my agent called and said, listen, and it's fashioned after a picture that was made out in the Sahara Desert, supposedly, with Lieutenant Commander takes a whole bunch of sailors out to the Sahara Desert to send back weather reports to the. And I said, well, it sounds good. But I said, you know, somebody here, I don't want to do television very much anymore. Well, he laughed and he said, okay. He said, but if you change your mind, let me know, because we came to my door the following morning. And he's selling chocolate bars for some school. He says, you look awfully familiar. I said, really? He said, well, what's your name? Oh, no, he does Gunsmoke. I said, no, my name is really Richard Boone. No, he does Have Gun Will Travel. I said, boy, this kid's pretty smart. But I'll tell him my name, and now he'll know, and all he's got to do is look in, and there's the... I said, well, thank you very much, son. Here's your money. Okay, bye-bye. I put down the chocolate bars and went to the telephone, called my agent, and I said, that part's still open? He said, yes. And they said, I said, okay, I'll do it. They said, what changed your mind? I said, none of your damn business. There was a time when in the Navy, we had a Navy lieutenant who used to come in, and at the very first, I said, McHale's Navy. He said, but I thought we were shooting the United States. I said, no, this is McHale's Navy, not the... Well, one day I get a call a couple of years later to go to
and to the Pentagon, where I had lunch with the Secretary of the Navy. And he says, "You're the best recruiter we've ever had." He said, "Everybody comes in the Navy wants to join McHale's." Had anyone like Joe Flynn, who played Captain Binghamton. He was. I love the comedy end of it, and to me, to keep a straight face sometimes when we were working was just so hard, because believe me, we put it right, get right in there, and it was just marvelous. And we had people coming down on the trams, and we'd pop up out of the bushes with spears and everything else, and oh my God, McHale's Navy, oh! And one woman fell out of the tram one day, so it was really something. But again, I say I love comedy. It shows, I think, in McHale's. Coming from his mouth, his lips, it hit me in such a way, And I loved him so much. He was just a most wonderful man, like Frank Sinatra. Just two great, wonderful people. They were real. A lot of people used to say bad things about him. Oh, he's a drunk, or he likes to fight and everything. No such thing. You know what Frank Sinatra did? He was laying in a hospital with a heart attack and everything else. And one day the ambulance backed up and they put Lee Cobb in the ambulance. "Where are you taking me?" He said, "Oh, that's all right. Don't worry about it." "Well, I got to pay." "No worry about it. That's taken care of." They took him out to Palm Springs and put him in the compound over there with Frank Sinatra. And Frank finally showed up, and Lee J. Cobb looked at him. He said, "But, sir, why? Why do you do this?" He said, "I like the way you were at the press club in Washington, which is quite prestigious, And I said, "What have I got? What do you want me to say?" And this fella had taken liking to me from the stories I've told. He said, "No, you just come in and just say what you're saying to me right now, and just tell them story." So I went in and I did my thing, And when I finished the thing, everybody politely, applauded, and it was very good. It's out there that bought a lot of cookies for the boys in Iraq. "Would you mind saying hello?" "No, not at all." So I walked out there, and as I'm walking, this lady is saying, "And this man has made a lot of pictures and done this and done that, and he's very." And I said, "How many of you have seen my pictures?" They all looked at me. Suddenly I had a brainstorm. I said, "How many of you know SpongeBob?" "Yes!" I said, "Well, I happen to play pictures. They couldn't get enough of me, And then, of course, I had to give them the even, and that was it. And how it all started, I don't know. My voice cracked when I was giving that, and so everybody, do it. I said, even in Washington, D.C., by the name of Jeff Krulik, who said, "You're coming to Milwaukee on your bus." And he said, "I've got an idea about showing Ernest Borgnine a day on his bus." And I said, "No." I said, "What are we going to do? How can we possibly go here, go there, do this, do that?" No, I don't. Finally, I said, "Okay, we'll do it." So we took a day, and we turned it into about a couple of days of work. My son was with me at the time, and I'm driving the bus, and we're going along, and we're at one of the breweries in Milwaukee, and this man walked up, and how they have their certain that they have to pass in to get their tools to work with, and he gave me his own ticket that he's had for 35 years. He remembered McHale's Navy, and he said, he gave me this. I still have it, believe it or not. And it's full of, how people give you things and do things. And this is what makes up all this whole thing of going out for a day with Borgnine on his bus. It was fun. It really was. I don't think we made more than one. In Jamaica or somewhere like that, and they had invited a whole bunch of critics from all around the world. And next morning after the picture would be a symposium of asking, why was this, why was that? And the very first question out of the box after they had seen the Wild Bunch was, why was this picture ever made? Now, we were all sitting up there, Sam Peckinpah, myself, Bill Holden, Warren Oates, Ben Johnson. We thought it was an excellent picture. And they said the shots, the blood, the this, the that. And it reminded me of the day When we had finished one section, Sam is walking along with his head kind of low. I put my arm around his shoulder and I said, Sam, what's... He said, I'm worried. I said, worried? About what? He said, I don't know. He said, I hesitate. By golly, we will. I saw him with bottles of blood going around, and bless his heart, he just...
We're sitting there, and then he said, and I got this part for you and everything, and I read, and pow, the car broke apart, and there I was.
Doing all this, making characters and stuff like that, and going along, and we were having a gay time on New Year's Eve, and here we go. It got to the point where we had to take a shower just before walking into the set, because you had to be wet. It was almost a wonderful way to finish a day, to come out and smell the smog out, because you're smelling smog all day long out there in the middle of that set. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world by any means, and of course, the most wonderful actor, and I can't remember their names now, unfortunately. And so she lost about $260,000 to this Jelly Winners. But we all had our laughs, and we used to make the best of it. And we had a wonderful director, and I can't remember his name either, but a wonderful British director. And this picture almost didn't become made for the simple reason that there was a new man came in at the 20th century. It got to the point where we had to take a shower just before walking into the set, because you had to be wet. It was almost a wonderful way to finish a day, to come out and smell the smog in the Los Angeles area, because you're smelling smog all day long out there in the middle of that set. It wasn't the easiest thing in the world by any means, and of course, Shelley was playing cards with our producer Irwin Allen had gone to pay his respects to this new man at the helm of 20th Century Fox. And he said, and I have $2 million and we're all set and we got all our things ready to go. And the fellow looked there and said, no, we're not going to make the film. No, we're not going to, we're going to, no. So Irwin went back to his office and he's crying. And the director said, well, what are you crying about? And Irwin said, but sir, he said, I got all my money tied up in it. And, oh, no, that's okay. But no, we're not going to make it. So Irwin went back to his office and he's crying. And the director said, well, what are you crying about? Tell me, do you have any whiskey? Yeah, we got whiskey. What do you want whiskey for at a time like that? He said, let's have a belt. We'll go back and talk to him. We had a belt. They went back and talked to him. Finally, this fellow said, all right, he said, you put $6 million on my table here tomorrow morning. Now, we finished the film. And one day we're over at Chasen's. We're having a big party. And he's there. This producer's there, and the head of the... And Tova, my wife, speaks up and said, I've been watching this picture, and it's going to make well over $200 million. And it let everything else go. And sure enough, it became one of the highest.
A woman that we were paying her $40 a day, as a matter of fact, to come in 5 times and clean up the house. And then she started complaining that the work was too hard and everything else. And I tried to show her one day that, and no, she said, no, when I was a youngster, my mother used to go on shopping, on Saturday. And she'd say, all right, now, you do it, and you do it right, or else you don't go to the movies. I got a big dime to go to the movies. And many times she came back, and I'd worked my tail off, trying to clean up the house. Yeah. A 2-story home that we had, and sometimes she'd just rip off the bed sheets and no, it wasn't done right. Bed sheets and no, it wasn't done right, and do this over again and do that over again. She made me do it, so I learned the hard way, and she taught me everything, and she taught me how to cook and sew. I had the opportunity of going back to Italy with her when she separated from my dad when I was just a boy, and 2 years of age, as a matter of fact. And at that time, he was feeling his oats and wanted to... He decided she'd go back to Italy, and we stayed away about 4.5 years. And when we came back, he was a new man, he settled down. And I never saw such a
pleasant relationship between two people after that. It was marvelous, and enthusiastic kids, you know, and they were having a good time until things happened. And when I came back, I couldn't speak to school. My mother used to dress me up in those little Lord Fauntleroy things, you know, at the... Oh, boy. Well, the very first morning I went to school, these kids from the brickyard said, volete andare per il gioco, which means, would you like to play? And I said, si, si. And so they put me in a tiny hill that they were going. They put me down just a little bit different, and I went right into a mud puddle. Oh. I never went to school. I learned how to speak Polish from one of his jobs that he was on. He spoke beautiful Polish. I never forgot. And he was that kind of a man. Finally ended up as a metallurgist. Actually, I don't know how she felt. I mean, I'm sure that... I don't think he ever did a good day's work in his life, you know? But in the morning, he'd get in his carriage with his spats on and his cutaway coat, you know, and his top hat, and his chauffeur would take him out to, with the horses, no less, beautifully, between my uncle's legs, looking up, and I saw this tremendous man coming on this absolutely white horse, and he had, I'll never forget it, all dressed up in black with a black... They told me they asked me one time if I wanted to play Mussolini, and I turned it down cold, but the thing that I always wanted to do was to wear that black...
Handled School of Dramatic Arts for about 3 months. Oh, we did.
And I'm looking, and these fellas are sitting there, and this man, Mr. Fox, I believe his name was playing Jesus Christ all over the place. And he was going to shoot the part that I was playing. I believe he was the first Christian, and turned out to be the play. So I'm getting into the part of it, you know what I mean? I'm standing there with my helmet on and everything else, kind of working things up. And he said to me, you don't mind if I don't put the person up there? He said, we'll just put a dot up there. Is that all right with you? I said, perfect. That's fine. I can picture him, don't worry. So, roll cameras. I kept looking up. I'd gone to practice that day. You know, they always have practice, they go up there and you're going to arrive at this moment, you're arriving at that moment, and would you mind coming up and accepting it this way, maybe if you win. So I've been there, and Jerry Lewis said to me, he said, you know, you're going to win. So I said, I got you, you've got to bet. So I went home and I took a red sock of my little daughter's red sock, I filled it up with 100. I was looking out over the audience as Grace Kelly had called out my name. And I had been looking out over the audience saying, Jesus, nice people, you know. And my wife is going, they called your name. Oh. I had no idea I was ever going to win, really. I had nothing to say. So I went up there, and suddenly I remembered the red sock name. I said, what? Oh, I had no idea I was ever going to win, really. I had nothing to say. So I went up there, and suddenly I remembered the red sock, the British Film Academy Award, which was given to me at the same time. I have the Golden Globe. I have any number of things, you know. But I didn't want fanfare. I don't like fanfare that much. But I think that I didn't want fanfare. I don't like fanfare that much. But I think that the life didn't become any better. It became a little bit more out of that contract finally. But it was terrible.
And that's what life is all about. Are we really, you know, you've had such success and everything else. How did you get that way? I said, by studying, by learning. The minute they take the thumb out, you've lost them. For the simple reason that nobody's paying attention. What did you say before? I don't understand that. It's a big word that they don't understand. You have to break it down to the lowest common denominator so that thumbs...
I joined the Navy in 1935 after high school. I was working on a vegetable truck for $3 a week. And, of course, there was depression in those days. I saw a sign that says, join the Navy, see the world. I said, boy, there's I can make some money at the same time, you know. So I joined the Navy. And I was one of 12 that made it out of about 1,200 people that were waiting to go into the service. This came out in 1941, decided to go home and see what it was all about then. And bam, 3 weeks later, or 3 months later, the war started, World War II. And I was, matter of fact, I was put on a yacht. It was one of 3 ships guarding the entire Atlantic coast at that time. There were 3 yachts, the Sylph, the Sapphire, and the Zircon. And I was on board the Sylph. I had my own private stateroom. Captain didn't know any better in those days. The captain used to knock on my door. Who is it? Come. And we went out one time and almost caught a submarine. Almost. And I was the gunner's mate on board ship, and we had a Y gun because the ship didn't go fast enough to roll the cans off the stern. Depth charges. Well, make a long story short, the captain called me and said, we got a submarine dead to rights, and he said, set the cans at 75 feet, and so on and so forth, and when I blow the bell, or blow the whistle, let her rip. Okay. So, and they're watching this stuff go over, and I'm kicking him in the behind. Come on, get up, load it up. And I'm listening for the detonation of the other ones. We knocked off about 10 of them. Not a one went off. And well, we came back into port. They started to take off the rest of the depth charges. And I said, wait a minute, you got fulminate of mercury in there and everything else. Oh, don't worry. He said, you got a chip and hammer. I got a chip and hammer. They chipped off a little tiny thing about this big. And it said manufactured in 1970.
And I think we got a good film for you. Hallmark always comes out with some good stuff, and believe me, I'm very happy to be in this one. It's about an old grandpa who has kind of given up on Christmases and everything else simply because his wife had left him and taken a young child. I tell you, working with Juliet was just marvelous. She hasn't got that method style or anything else. It comes right from the heart.
Right.
And that's what I love, you know, when you work from the heart and the head. That's what a lot of young actors these days don't know what it's all about.
Right.
They walk in off the street whenever I can, and I just say, hey, listen, this is where it all stems from, right here,
right, and
right here. And if you just say your lines, like Spencer Tracy once said, just remember to say your lines well and don't bump up against the first. I think around the end of this year, aces and eights, and they took a horse. And everybody said, Borknine's going to ride a horse. Really? Everybody come down and watch you get on a horse. And there's so many others that are with us. And we had a wonderful director, Harvey Frost. And we shot had a whole picture in 4 weeks' time. Boom, bam, bim. And here it is, A Grandpa for Christmas. And I enjoyed it. When I first saw it, I really did. I enjoyed it very much. Believe me, it's my pleasure. And listen, but I tell you, after that long trip coming in all the way, that's the best thing you can possibly do. Be nice to people, and they'll be nice to you. I think that if we all were nicer to each other as we went, because, hey, we only have one life to live. Let's live it right. My mother once told me, she said, if you can make one person happy in the span of 24 hours, you've accomplished a great... Well, I don't know, but she's a woman that, boy, I tell you, she's all woman. She's some person that I love and I'm ready to go home to anytime. She's the kind of a person that gets out there and hustles and does things for herself. Let the grass grow under her feet, you know what I mean? She likes to get out there and go. And not only that, but we love each other. That's the way we do. And I think that's the whole trouble about marriage. People don't really... And there comes a time when people that can't stop talking to each other. And, when they're first married and they're first, yes, we got to talk. We'd go out there and help people in distress, go out and help and do things, that we got to a point where people actually started believing that this ship was just the way it was. We'd have it over at air meets, when the U.S. Navy demonstration teams used to come by, the Blue Angels. And
And people would look at it, and the kids would look at it and be all loaded down with guns and everything else, you know. And there was the, you know, the ship itself. Oh, man. And where did it come from? The inside of a volcano, no less. It was marvelous, you know. And we often used to say, no, don't go near it because, no, we can't tell. And we never said a word about it, you know. And everybody believed it. My goodness, this is really something. And we actually had thoughts that the Russians were kind of leery. He wanted to keep everything in line, you know. Everybody that came along, you know, said, well, what do you think about, well, yeah, let's go, you know. And he'd always go in cooperation with his buddy, you know, Jan Michael Vincent, and off we'd go. We'd do another tear off into something and go up and do something else. And he was always a stalwart behind the pilot who was working all the gadgets and all the computers and everything else. And that was his job. Don Belisario picked the right fella. I mean, Jan Michael did a script like this and say, okay, let's shoot it. Me, I've got a script and then take every word for what I can, you know, and make something out of it. He could just, bam, that's it. He had a photographic mind, just like Brad Crawford had at one time. I often, how can the people do it? This is amazing, to have a photographic memory and shoot. A wonderful pilot. And he took us up for orientation to see how we won helicopter. And he took us up and we'd go around and do this and do that, and we asked questions, and he put our hands on the control and everything else. And I had my hands on the control one day, and he said, okay, take over. And he pulled his hands away, you know? And he said, no, you've had it. You've been handling it for 5 minutes. I said, what? And I suddenly learned a great lesson. Your knees are your stalwart things, and you hold on to your knees and put these things over by your knees, and you steady right down. And it's all your feet are working, your hands are working, and it's one of those kind of, you've got to be on the ball. Besides listening to what the radio and everything else, you got to be on the ball to be a helicopter pilot. And this fella one time, Jones, was out there listening to what the radio and everything else, you got to be on the ball to be a helicopter pilot. And this fella one time, Jones, was out there doing loop-de-loop, you know, crazy things over the Pacific Ocean while we were shooting down by the water. And I said, are you doing what I think you're doing? You look at it, he was the epitome of a good show host, a good night host, you know, a man that you look forward to seeing, even if his shows were mediocre at one time or something like that. But yet he always brought up something that was good, fun. And to know him personally, he was quite different. You know, he was quite retreated. He just retreated into himself. He became a wallflower. But Johnny was Johnny, and I'll never forget how I got on to be a clown. One time, he said to me, Ernie said, what have you been up to? And I said, oh, I've been doing this, that, and the other thing. I was on to promote some picture, I guess. And he said, you know, you've done just about everything there is to do. What's left? I said, oh, lots of things. And he, you know, pinning me down, said, like what? There's a fella back there in Milwaukee. And he called me up the next day. He said, you want to be a clown? We got the best thing in the world for you. Oh, my goodness, come on. You got to come here. You got to do it. We're going to have you as a clown. I said, okay, I'll come, you know. I was just about getting ready to do Poseidon Adventure. 1970. I went and did this clown. I did the clown bit from 1972 to 2002. And now this next year, 2000, and they used to bring these wonderful wagons down from Baraboo, Wisconsin. These wonderful old wagons that they had, you know, circus wagons. They'd put them on a train like they had this old circus train. They used to pull it and bring them down into Milwaukee. They'd put them out there in a great big field that they had out there by the water. And then we'd have a regular circus Sunday. They'd have a big circus parade with the elephants and the bands and everything.
From China after working on a film and was kind of frustrated with his career. Well, you know, when I first got the audition for Congo, or the meeting for Congo, I think were really some really creative work and some courageous work. A hard time doing, but it was great to be a part of it. And but I think when we were first and we didn't get the accolades, we didn't get the Emmy nominations and the recognition from the industry. But I think by the time we finished and Sopranos came along, yeah, you know, I just, because I was the warden of the prison, so I always felt that I had to about them, and so it became very important for me to hold my own in the midst of all that. You know, sometimes and put my suit on and shine my shoes, which is kind of my character. And when I step out on the set, the friendship stuff, it was like I was Warden Glenn, and I got that. People kind of kept a little distance, you know. They would invite everybody to lunch, but somehow I wasn't invited, you know. It was just always that. There's and I need to do some work on it, but it's Ernie-Hudson.com. It's called Doonby. We shot it in Texas. There's a show I do called Secret Life of the American. You know, man, I just like to work, so I'm open to whatever, you know. Well, you know, of course, you know, I mean, I have 4 sons, so, you know, the Iron Man, and I was a fan of the Marvel comics when I was in the movie and have a reason to be there first day it come out. But yeah, no, I love to check stuff out. It's some wonderful stuff being made, and yeah, you know, and I believe in supporting, you know, so yeah, I'll be there. I'll be in the audience, eating my popcorn. Before he became a movie, you know, sometimes it's better to have. You know, the Black Panther is probably first movie they ever saw, whatever. So they tie the movie into their lives in a very strange way. Either never saw or never want to talk about. So it's nice to have a few that people. Yeah, I've been very blessed. I think it's, you know, I'm an actor. And so my job is to act. Well, I mean, I really love him and I appreciate Bill, and he's always been there. The stronger movie. The second one was more family friendly.
Yeah.
And I think if you're a little kid and for parents who wanted their kids, there were a lot of lines that at the time I was saying them, I didn't realize people would be quoting, you know, 30 years, you know, like your work. And so I come out here, I meet these guys, for people who actually see the movie, and it registers, you know. So, I mean, that guy's seen the movie about 150 times, and he knows every line in the movie. Decided to name it Ghostbusters 3 because we never thought we'd come up with another movie. And then Bill Murray decided to do the video game, and then said, at the point where she realizes that the past is gone and she has to move on, and I'm part of that movie here for 30 years. People are putting on their jumpsuits and making their backpacks and turning their cars into ectomobiles. Like I said, it is what it is. I'm very happy to be a part of it. I don't understand sometimes. I don't always understand. So, you know, just wanting fans to know that if I'm not, it's not.
You know, the world can be difficult, but I just had a very amazingly blessed life. So, I don't know what that has to do with, you know, the hardest thing I think is trying to, it's time to do something, and I'm very good. I can really discipline myself, and I'll trim down and I'll drop 3 or 4 nights in a row. You know, it's gonna, you know. Also, I didn't really, because I had responsibilities, you know, association, franchise board, just kind of like that. Now we have, I know this is not that important. I mean, I'd love to be a part of it, but, you know, because the studio has made choices that somehow left Winston out of it. I don't just sit and say, oh yeah, when we make the other Ghostbusters, I know they're gonna call me. I don't know anything. But the movie was never really meant to be Monroe Kelly's movie. I think the movie was meant to be.
Yeah, you know, over the years, it's been over 30 years, and all these little girls in their Ghostbuster outfits, they come up, and I'm these representing, you know, and you know, the script is amazingly funny. You know, so I'm back, and Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Sigourney Weaver, and we all coming, but the girls who you believe is the best performance. The worst thing to happen would be for someone to vote based on for the performance. So it's not really, I think, the responsibility of the Academy as much as the industry to be more inclusive, to allow people of nonsense excuse. We need to be more inclusive. And it's the directors and it's all of us accepting the fact, look at the world the way the world is. I can't tell you how many things I've seen, and it's like nope. So we just have to be, and I don't think it's an attempt, I think it's just a lack of awareness. People go, oh, I didn't think about that. Well, it's time to solution, then really focus on what the problem is. Because I don't think it's a major problem. We just have to be.
We follow the lives of 4 basic characters, Jack Black, Tim Robbins, Asif Manbi, and Pablo Schreiber, as their stories intertwine during the geopolitical chaos trying to avert World War III. I play the president, Julian Navarra, the next first Latino president on TV. But it's a comedy. It's kind of a black comedy. I think my whole life I've been thinking about what it would be like to be a president. I mean, I grew up and who I believe was the last truly kind of independent president that we've had. Everybody else seems other interests that they're beholden to. So I look at him as a Latino republic. We go to the movies more than the average American. We consume their product beyond our numbers, yet we're represented way and far below our numbers. And then when we are represented, we're not always represented well. So we thought, well, how do you change that? And you change that, in my opinion, in their fields of expertise, and we want to help them by not only raising monies to help them finish their thesis, but also to help connect them to the industry. The industry is always looking for the right people to connect to their projects, and people of this background are kind of underrepresented in the producerial staff. So we want to help connect people to the marketplace that will use them, and hopefully that will change the landscape, because if the folks behind the scenes understand who we are and are made up of us, I think they'll be less likely to stereotype us. Because, you know, we can all just work for ourselves and our individual success, but I think if we all succeed, it's a sweeter success. You know, what good is having freedom if someone else doesn't? What good is having wealth next to someone who's starving? And dictator, that you can not only take care of yourself and be self-reliant, but if you're really successful, you can make sure the people around you are not in unnecessary need. I don't believe in giving people everything they want for free and for no effort. I believe in helping people. You're a star to your family and your friends who always believe in you, say, hey, you do this, you can do this. But when you get to Hollywood, everybody wants to be a star. Everybody wants to be successful. And all of a sudden you feel like just a tiny pebble on a very big beach. So you have to figure out a way to stand out. You have to figure out a way to do without kind of overstepping your bounds. You gotta really pay attention and see what others do that work and that doesn't work. We have to learn from our mistakes. Keep at it. If you keep at anything, you will eventually become better if it's what you're meant to do. Now, if it's not working and you don't have passion for it, it's okay. Find another job. But if you have a zen for this, el gozo, they say in Spanish, is joy while you're doing your craft. It's not about the money, it's not about the fame, it's about knowing you were doing what you were born to. Once in a while, I wonder, is it all worth it? Because, you know, we get high and we get low. What you folks out there think is a very successful person, sometimes is a person who's insecure about their next move. Sometimes you work and work and work, and all of a sudden, for months, the phone doesn't ring. And you're like, wait a minute, but I've done all this stuff. So there's no guarantee. You know what? I used to think, okay, once I make my first big movie, they'll discover me and they'll see that I was, you know, it'll be easier. Yes, it's not that, and it shouldn't be that. What happens is you figure out that the destination, learning how to love what you do, whether or not it pays off right away, will keep you able to do it a lot longer. And chances are the longer you do it, the better your odds are. Just nothing like it, because it really combined. It was a synthesis of Americana, rock and roll, Latinos, and took itself to another level because of all the talent that came together to make it shine. And it wasn't just a success in Latino audiences and homes. It was a success that reached a universal appeal to audiences outside of the traditional category. So I was very happy to be a part of a film that let me shine, that let me play a real human being, not just the bad guy, but a full. And I was a young man, I was 23 at the time, playing somebody older, playing Richie's older brother. And it's pretty epic, I gotta say. I remember now the things we did, the rehearsals, meeting the real Valenzuela family, meeting the real Bob Morales was a blessing. I don't think I ever would have had as specific a performance had I not met the real Bob Morales and all of his mannerisms and proud chicanismos, you know, the Mexican hello as they go, Ike, you know, that whole, that pride thing, you know, that's just, but I tell people, you are unique, whoever you are. Find out what's so unique about you and that which makes you care about another person, makes you care about your character. You have to stay in touch. You work things out and you bring it to the set, but we go, there is a process on this. Okay, we got away with that because it's true, it's hard.
People don't want to hear where their food comes from. What a great thing that a movie actually deals with this head on.
not only what we do to the animals, but clever, not beat you over the head too much way, how we are not very different, or at least the people in that industry are not very different.
Yeah, well, the thing is, my guy is a good bad guy, a bad good guy. He's the kind of person that means well, but unfortunately didn't make the right decision. Too late for some of the things in his life, and his wife may be having an affair, and his son may. It's I don't want to give away too much, but it is very harrowing to figure out how.
Elizabeth, and realized we haven't been in, all three of us, in the same room in almost a few years before La Bamba, about 5 years exactly. We shot a film. It was the lighter side of Bob Morales. Bob Morales was the dark side. I'm like, come on, you can do better, Eastside. So the same I asked for the people out there. Don't be afraid. DVR it if possible, because you're going to want to go. It's just wonderful to have entertainment that doesn't talk down to its audience. And it's just so kind of like the lowest common denominator entertainment. It's so refreshing to be on a storyline and the implications of what it is. So 58 or so. I know some people are saying, wait a minute about the age, but there's an answer for that. He's a representative of not only how much we love our artists, but as Latin men, how strong.
Iconic.
Oh, yes, he is. And his son, I mean, what a beautiful man, and an incredible following as well. So we are proud of all the nominees, and especially Vicente Fernandez, Canigas. It's like you've made it, you know. It really takes you to another level. The fact of the matter, and people's disc collections that don't speak Spanish. We used to be the followers, and now we are contributing at such a rate that it is amazing, and it makes. We really have suffered a lot as a nation, because we're like a dysfunctional diaspora family that doesn't know each other well enough. I never knew of Cesar Chavez until I came to Los and thriving. I've got 2 wonderful projects coming out. I hate to be the typical actor and Caprica, but the fact of the matter is Edward James Olmos did an amazing job in Battlestar. Hi, I'm Isai Morales, and you're watching Muse. Actually, you are a muse. Thanks for pointing out that I'm still rather young in my career, relatively. It feels like I'm about to die. No, the first Lifetime Achievement Award I got was, but I got over that real quick, and I'm just looking forward to looking back, because I don't do that a lot. When people ask me, what's your favorite job you've ever done, I go, the one I'm about to do next. The one that's going to put my kid through school another year. The one that's going to make sure, we're okay and we can save up some money. And a career, and I'm blessed to be able to do something that I love doing that can also feed my family. That to me is the ultimate blessing. I have passion. So the one I'm about to do next, the one that's going to put my kid through school another year, the one that's going to make sure, we're okay and we can save up some money. Around 18 years giving out awards, is acknowledging me is a major honor, because they're an international organization. They're about diversity. They're about the human condition, human rights, and unity. One of the films, the film that they're opening the festival with, is called Lost Bird. Is a collaboration between an Armenian and Turkish filmmakers. So that's a huge step. That's like an Israeli-Palestinian collaboration. That's like, a collaboration between North and South Korea. Communities that have been traditionally opposed to each other coming together to create beauty and art that makes us feel better about, being alive. That is what I'm about. So that this organization is honoring me, and they have those goals and values. Saw us on film when we were, the bad guys. We were the guys to kill. We were the good guys to, do away with. And it's sad. I felt it then. The film I did before that put me on the map was Bad Boys with Sean Penn. And I played the main bad guy there. And even though I played the main bad guy in La Bamba, there was a difference with La Bamba, because we were all shown as 3-dimensional. We were human beings, not just hate fodder, not just people to want your hero to vanquish. And the character that I played had so many dimensions and facets that you felt for him. He wasn't just a bad guy. You felt his pain. You wanted to, knock him upside the head a few times, but you also wanted to take him and hug him and say, hey, you mean something too. And I think that's what a lot of people need. A lot of people in this world, fall through the crack, and they just don't get appreciated. They don't get the love that, they felt they deserved, whether it's from their parents or from their community. Or co-workers, that's why you got people going postal, quote unquote, because they don't feel loved, they don't feel appreciated, they don't feel like they're connected to the human race. And if that's the case, then there's no love lost.
and they act out, So I'm grateful, I'm excited, and I'm looking forward to reminding people that, I see more, which is good. But, you got to remember, even from the 80s when La Bamba came out, they said, oh, yeah, it was going to be a wave. They call it the Latino wave. But what do we know about waves? They come and they go. And we just need to make sure we're more than just a wave. We're not a temporal presence in this country. We buy. We over-index in consumption of entertainment products, whether it's television, whether it's internet. We outspend our own percentages, yet we are very, very marginally to this day. So that says to me that while we've come a long way, we still have a long way to go, so that we reach something near parity. Well, especially since the election of the first African-American president. You see how corporate commercials have changed. Now they have black, or African-American leads. Now you have mixed families being not such a big deal. I mean, I've watched commercials, and I'm realizing, wow, we've evolved. So I hope the same goes for us. I hope we get a president for people to actually put us in leads in movies and storylines or commercials anymore, but that they realize that we are part of their family, that we are as American as anyone else. Matter of fact, maybe even more American, because our ancestors come from the Americas as well as from Europe. So we have this continent within us. So when people talk about, you know what, those are Americans too. They're Central Americans, they're South Americans, and they're North Americans. Mexico is in North America. So let's watch how we treat people that aren't quote-unquote, because they are American, and they're human beings, and they just want to live and feed their children like everybody else. So I don't want to mention any candidate's name poking at us, predictably getting a lot of attention in return for it, but not getting enough pushback. And that's why I was at a rally a few weeks ago with Federico Peña and Dolores Huerta at the GOP's. We do not accept this. We're going to take your slings and arrows, and instead of get angry and fight back and go other rude things we can say, we're going to take those arrows and create bridges and ladders and rise above the occasion. And we're going to kill our enemies with kindness and show them that, you know what, you do not define us. Sure. Well, I just did something that aired on Blue Bloods, a little something just to test the waters there, and I just finished taping something for Mozart in the Jungle, which is a wonderful show, very much like the kinds that we need to see, where Gael Garcia Bernal, who's a brilliant Mexican actor, is the lead. He plays a conductor, very much like Dudamel, who in this episode goes back to Mexico, as our prodigal child returns to Mexico, and I play a Mexican billionaire who is the richest man in the world, or richest man in Mexico or the world, depending on the day, which sounds like one of them now. They compete with with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, I guess, as who's the richest in the world. But I like playing these characters. I just finished playing the President of the United States on the brink in a credible manner, which was very important for me. And I'm getting offers to play more dignified statesmen, political leaders, and things that are, to me, a warm welcome away from the rapists, killers, gangbangers, stabbers, people that scare the public. I'm here to let you know that we come in all kinds, sizes, shapes, colors, and attitudes. It's hard, after doing this for 35 years, to find a new angle on some of these archetypes. But then that's good. That's a challenge, I'm the kind of person that, after bristling at an unexpected barrier, then I'm like, wait a minute, hang on. That can help, because that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And we have to teach our young people that the barriers that they face, as daunting as they are blessings in disguise. Because once you get... I know, it went viral. I was there shooting a short, a little piece for someone else, a young filmmaker. And as I was leaving, I said, hey, man, you guys should name it East Side Love, right? And he goes, yeah, well, you want to buy it? And I'm like, sure, how much? So we were just joking in that level. But then he said, here's the keys. And then we said, hey, let's get a picture of this. And then we said, hey, just run with this. Just don't say anything for a little while and see if people buy it. And they did. And I was getting congratulations. Even after we exposed that it was just a self-made hoax, And, you know, part of me thinks maybe I should have.
His cover, basically. I mean, he's practically like a CIA operative who has to get the mission done, but cannot afford to risk. I sometimes will tell you too much so that you don't understand what is and what's not real. There's something to mis and disinformation. Francisco does the opposite. Center, or rarely the center of the story. We were rarely pivotal, and I always felt like we were flavoring. We made it Latino because we wanted to add a little flavor, a Latin, just a touch. See, never enough. More like set dressing. Little danger. Let's go to El Barrio. Saying, if you want to send a message, go to Western Union. Well, I got a message for that mentality. Every move. Let's find them. Let's look for them and dissect them. Is it good for us or is it bad for us? And if it's bad for us, then just so, you know, we got to be really conscious about what is out there and support.
To so much catastrophe. You're going to put people who've lived there for thousands and thousands.
He sees all the mistakes, all the falls that you take. They usually see, you know, the good stuff, and that's great. But I got to tell you, it hasn't been rely on his ethnicity, but he has it there with him. That soul, who you are. You know, the Taurons. We were the all-purpose ethnic family on that.
Human beings, and especially people with culture, class, and heart, like the Persian community, much more than is always, you know, than is appreciated in the media.
As a result of my relationship with Rashad Ernesto Green, who was a 3-time recipient of our scholarship from the National Hispanic Foundation for the Arts. It's a foundation that we do in DC. We have a yearly fundraiser to raise money to help kids who are excelling in their schools, certain Ivy League schools. If you have a high enough grade point average, and if you write to us and tell us why you want our help, we hand out scholarships, and they're not change your life scholarships. So I remember Rashad came up to me. I got the script. It's almost ready. It's based on a true story, and I wrote it with you in mind. And at that point, okay, sure. What do you got? Most of the time you get these things and it's, you know, nice try, but, you know, come back next year. I read this and I said, wow. I mean, I was upset that, you know, it's kind of like I wanted to see more because I felt like I was looking at something I did not have access to all the time. You know, the inner workings of a family with an issue, you know, with sexual identity. And, you know, what the funny thing is that you can make so many analogies. He went into one prison, but he was still imprisoned by his beliefs, still imprisoned by his attitudes, his unevolved attitudes towards his child's. You know, he's put everything he has into it, and it shows. It's a. He went to NYU Film School with Spike Lee as a mentor, and you know, go crazy and like, you know, be the biggest cheerleader, but they will give themselves. And that's what I love about the script. Nobody's a real bad guy in this movie. You don't need a bad, because everybody's trying to help each other to no end, and the road to hell is from being laughed at and spit upon. Because when you're a Latin kid, that's what your parents tell you. You don't want to be like that. The fact that, you know, here I am, a person who's very modern, very supposedly, you know, very. I don't think any of us are anyone all the way. I know so many gay conservatives, log cabin Republicans. You know, I always thought, how does that work? Be a certain way. And their sexuality is like an addendum. You know, it shouldn't define their politics. So what I loved is being all but people have a certain desire to be a certain way, and their sexuality is like an addendum. You know, it shouldn't define their politics. So what I loved is being all progressive and understanding, and I love quote unquote drag queens, because my used to always have great banter. They always have the best returns. They will set you straight quick. So I have an affinity. I loved the movie Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I thought it was brilliant. And those actors, most of them were straight, I believe, did a great job. But that wouldn't have worked in this by this movie. And I thought I was already there. I thought, well, you know, it's like I tell people, no one scene does this movie. No one scene describes it completely. Your guts are ripped out because you know these people love each other. That I not do New York, Italian. I'm not playing a cop. He goes, yo, you know, he sounded like NYPD Blue. Yo, deepest, darkest Bronx, and I absorbed the city vibe, the biorhythm. Another surprise was just how, if you also go the other way with that, it could be unintentionally dreary and depressing.
We don't want that. So this is a real tightrope walk. And I was surprised, pleasantly surprised, by just how amazing Harmony's performance was, because we cut around certain things and we used the best. And man, you would think she's been acting for a while, and or it doesn't matter. You just fall in love with that beautiful face, incredible. Has been like, oh my God, I had no idea. I thought I was walking into another kind. I'm talking about little old ladies. I'm like the white people, Asian people, black. Are they upset? Did they not like the movie? And I walk in and I see 80% of the audience. That after all this technology, all this time of supposedly evolving into an incredible, human race that can do. On our first reviews out of Sundance, which was incredible, the standing ovation, sold out every time, and they have large gay contingent. But when they were cheering and screaming, and then a reviewer gave us a snarky review, said it we were swimming in a sea of cliches. Well, obviously they don't. No, we're no cliches at all. Cliches are based on reality. Yeah, we have a lot of people in jail. Yeah, we have a lot of strong. Yeah, we have a lot of machismo that doesn't know how to deal. That's a cliche, but it's like saying a love story is a cliche because a man's in love with a woman. Oh, how many times have we seen that before? Really watch the film. Maybe they resented the audience's reaction and they had to give it a poop. They must have gone to the bathroom for 3/4 of it, based on what was written.